Hello there everyone, Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and in this video I'd like to share with you a time lapse that was taken from a 7-part lesson series, a recent live lesson series, where we create a oil pastel landscape that features a fall landscape with some water and reflection, lots of challenges here. In this time lapse, of course, I'll walk you through the entire process and also add some tips for working with oil pastels, of course. Now, if you want to access this complete lesson series, it's part of our membership program over at thevirtualinstructor.com. The membership program includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of media and subject matter, weekly live lessons, and all of the live lessons are recorded, and they go all the way back to 2012, so they're all stored in our vault, so it's tons and tons of content. There's also weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute, and there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. If you want to check out the membership program and start your free trial, there's a link in the description below. You can go check it out. If you want to just check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, I'll leave a link in the description below for that as well. With that being said, we'll go ahead and cover the materials used, and then I'll walk you through the entire process in this time lapse. For this oil pastel image, I used a combination of Cray Pas Expressionist oil pastels and Sennelier oil pastels. For this drawing, we worked on Canson Mi-Teintes pastel paper using the tobacco color. For this drawing, I decided to start with a dark brown oil pastel, and I just wanted to plan out the general locations of the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. And of course, the dominant trees that we see in the middle ground. So you can see I'm quickly and loosely just putting a range of values here using this dark brown oil pastel. I started initially using the Cray Pas Expressionist oil pastels because they're a harder pastel and they're easy to cover over the top with the softer Sennelier oil pastel. And this was basically the approach that I took throughout the drawing, starting with the harder pastels as the underlayment and then going with the softer oil pastels for the overlayment, or the top layers, if you will. You'll also notice that I'm starting to add colors here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm essentially working from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner of the picture plane. This is mainly because I'm right-handed, and I'm trying to keep the palm of my hand out of the way of the oil pastels. Now you can see oil pastels perform their best when they're layered. So the mixing happens on the surface, which is an exciting thing and good for those of us who like to spend our time making marks instead of mixing paints. But as you'll see, the finished result does resemble a very thickly applied oil painting. And these layers, of course, are built up through those layered applications, and there's a bit of mixing that occurs on the surface. So you can see some of the grays are created by adding just a touch of black and white in areas. But for the most part, I tried to find colors that matched what I was observing in the reference. As I mentioned, we're working here on Canson Mi-Teintes pastel paper, and this paper has 2 distinct sides. One side is less textured than the other. We're working here on the heavier textured side. Now, both sides of the paper do have a bit of tooth or texture associated with it, but definitely this heavier toothed side of the paper is a little bit better to work on when we're working with oil pastels, in my opinion. As I mentioned, layering the colors is especially important because that's where the mixing happens, of course, and you want to have a surface that has a pretty heavy tooth to accept all these layers. Although oil pastels can be applied really to any surface since they stick to just about anything, they're really at their best when you can layer the colors as we see here. And working on a smoother surface with less tooth or texture is going to really restrict the amount of layers that you can apply. On this dominant tree, you can see I've added a ton of layers, a variety of blacks and browns, and then I started adding some color. Now, these colors aren't necessarily evident in the reference, but it was a color choice in which I wanted to tie everything together with. So I focused on locating some of the secondary colors. And secondary colors, of course, are green, purple, and orange. And these colors provide high contrast and pop, and that's something that I wanted in this image. So any opportunity where I could add a little bit of orange, a little bit of purple, or a little bit of green, I took that opportunity. And as you can see, as we develop the water, a lot more of those purples are going to make an appearance, as well as the oranges. Now, working to the right side of the picture plane, you can see here that I'm focusing mainly on just the shapes that I see. I'm not concentrating on all of the little details that the camera picks up, and of course that our eyes pick up as well. When you're working with a looser medium like oil pastels, where details are not necessarily something that's easy to attain, then it's a good idea to focus on the shapes of value and color that you see, and then allow your viewer's eye or your viewer's mind to put that information together. Now, when I'm working on a traditional pastel drawing with soft pastels, these of course are oil pastels and they're different from soft pastels, I typically work from the background to the middle ground and then the foreground last. I'm taking an approach with this drawing / painting as well, but I am mindful of the objects that overlap what's in the background. So you can see I developed these trees in the middle ground before developing the areas around them, and that's because, again, because of the layering with oil pastels, there's a certain amount of material you can add to the surface before it's filled in the tooth completely. With traditional soft pastels, we don't have to worry about that quite as much because the dusty pastels don't fill in the tooth quite as strongly as the oil pastels. So I like to think of oil pastels as more of a larger colored pencil medium. So I would approach an oil pastel drawing in a similar manner as a colored pencil drawing. We can see the correlations there because our mixing occurs on the surface, of course, and we do have to think about the order in which we tackle different parts of the drawing. Now, as you see, as we developed the water and worked over to some of the rocks and sticks and logs and things over on the left side of the picture plane, again, I was adding color as much as I possibly could. You'll also notice that I did have to add some black here and there just to make the shadows as dark as they need to be. In most cases, you want to avoid adding flat black to a color drawing because it can make it look flat or unnatural. So in many of the darker areas where I did use black, I went back in with another color and at least added a little bit of hue to those sections. And here in the middle ground where we see these grasses, I did try to push the envelope a little bit with the variety of different greens that I used here as well. Then of course, as we worked our way down the picture plane, it was time to begin addressing some of those reflections in the water. And this reference is a little bit tricky because we could not only see the reflections of the trees in the distance, but also some of the leaves just below the surface of the water. So I did a little bit of an experimentation here, trying to figure out how I was going to handle the actual texture that was observed in the reference photo. And what I came up with was basically just small horizontal strokes with a variety of different values and colors, of course. Now, as you can see at this point, our oil pastel drawing is definitely resembling a painting. And this is something important to keep in mind when you're working with oil pastels. The end result, in most circumstances, is going to resemble a painting. So we need to think about our brush strokes or our brush work when we're applying the oil pastel. Now that might seem strange since we're not using any brushes here, but you want to think about the marks that you make on the surface as being brush strokes. Now, a brush can make a variety of different marks, and the same is true for the oil pastel. The amount of pressure that you place on the oil pastel can affect the resulting stroke, and I'm putting that in quotations. And also the angle in which you apply the oil pastel can also have an effect on the resulting brush stroke that is perceived in the oil pastel image. Now, after adding the sky as a reflection in the water, I went back and changed the blue in the sky just a bit, and then it was time to remove the tape. And our oil pastel drawing of a fall landscape with water and reflections was complete. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to pick up a couple of things here and there. Remember, if you did enjoy this video, give this video a thumbs up and like it and let me know about it. And if you haven't done so yet, why not subscribe to the channel? We cover a broad variety of drawing and painting subject matter and media here. We even have a live show called Getting Sketchy. If you haven't checked that out, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I wish you all the very best in your artistic success.